Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. What would you say if you had the chance to speak to the world for only a few minutes as you stood beside a giant concrete wall that separated families, friends, and an entire city for nearly 30 years? Learn how, on June 12, 1987, President Ronald Reagan stood before the famous Brandenburg Gate in West Berlin and delivered this bold challenge to Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. This wall will fall, for it cannot withstand faith. It cannot withstand truth. The wall cannot withstand freedom. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Imagine waking up on a Sunday morning, right? You look at your front window and you just see armed soldiers.
Yeah.
Just unspooling barbed wire across your literal street, and your neighbors on the other side. You won't be able to speak to them again for like 28 years.
It's really hard to even conceptualize.
Right. Your daily commute, your favorite bakery, maybe even your own parents are suddenly just completely cut off from you. On August 13, 1961, that wasn't, a dystopian nightmare. That was just reality for the citizens of Berlin.
It really is one of the most chilling psychological shocks in modern history. I mean, the fundamental definition of a city.
Right. A place of connection.
Exactly. Connection, commerce, community. That was violently inverted, literally overnight.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're taking you on a really profound journey through history. We are exploring the Berlin Wall, the incredibly pivotal relationship between Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, and ultimately we're going to reflect on the meaning of walls in your own life today.
It's going to be quite the ride.
Yeah, we are pulling together historical records of the Cold War, excerpts from some of the most famous presidential speeches of the 20th century, and even teachings from Elder M. Russell Ballard to really ground this whole conversation. And I want to emphasize, everything we are looking at in these sources today is the absolute truth of what happened. It is pure historical fact.
It is a remarkable narrative arc, honestly.
Yeah.
We are moving from like one of the most visible, oppressive physical barriers in human history right to the very walls of the room you are sitting in right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how a 104-mile concrete barrier changed world history and how a very surprising friendship helped tear it down, we really have to start with the sheer massive physical reality of why it even went up in the first place.
Right. The context is everything here.
Exactly. So we have to look at the period right after World War II as the world just plunged into the Cold War. Germany, and specifically the city of Berlin, is divided. And between 1949 and 1961, the communist government of the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, was basically bleeding out.
They were facing a massive existential crisis. I mean, we're talking about more than 2.5 million East Germans fleeing to the West.
2.5 million.
Yeah. And we really have to understand what that number actually represents.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't just a random assortment of people moving for better weather, right?
Right.
This was a catastrophic brain drain.
Sure.
You were losing doctors, engineers, teachers, young laborers. You're losing the very human capital that is required to just run a functioning society.
Oh.
They were fleeing in search of freedom, abandoning the communist system by the millions.
So 2.5 million people choosing to just walk away. And the government's response on that Sunday morning in August 1961 wasn't, to look inward. They didn't change their policies to make people actually want to stay.
No, at all.
Instead, they decided to trap them. They began building the Berlin Wall, which eventually became this 104-mile-long barrier made of concrete and barbed wire. And it was explicitly designed to prevent East German citizens from escaping to the free side of West Berlin. Which, that brings up such a wild architectural paradox to me. Because usually, you build a fortress wall to keep enemies out. You build a castle to protect the people inside from an invading army. But this was a 104-mile prison wall designed to keep your own citizens in. How jarring must it have been for the world to just watch a government imprison its own city overnight?
Oh, completely surreal. What's fascinating here is the profound ideological failure that the wall actually represented. It's the ultimate paradox.
Tell me about it.
Well, the East German government claimed they were building this workers' paradise, right? But they had to build a 104-mile prison to keep the workers from escaping it.
That is such a good point.
The wall wasn't a show of strength. It was a 104-mile concrete monument to their failure. Like, if your society is a utopia, You do not need armed guards and attack dogs to keep people from leaving.
No, you definitely don't.
The communist government was attempting to showcase the superiority of their system to the entire world. But the daily reality of millions of people fleeing just totally undermined that narrative. They had to use concrete because the ideas themselves just weren't enough to hold the population.
A physical manifestation of an ideological defeat. I love that phrasing. But let's look at how the people who are actually trapped inside responded to that physical reality, because here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
You have this unyielding concrete wall, but it immediately clashes with this unstoppable human spirit that simply refused to be contained. So the city was divided for 28 years, from 1961 to 1989. And during that time, despite the guards, the death strips, the barbed wire, more than 5,000 East Germans managed to secretly cross the border.
We are not talking about people just, slipping past the sleeping guard. The sheer mechanical ingenuity born out of absolute desperation is just staggering.
Yeah, the things they did were wild.
People were jumping out of the windows of apartment buildings that abutted the wall. They were climbing directly over the barbed wire, risking being shot on sight.
Yeah.
They were driving heavy vehicles right through the weaker parts of the wall at maximum speeds, just basically hoping they would survive the impact. Some even crawled through the city's subterranean sewer systems.
But the ones that absolutely floor me are the hot air balloons and the tunnels. Like, people were literally flying over the wall in homemade hot air balloons.
It sounds like a movie.
It really does.
Okay.
We have to talk about how that is even possible. How do you acquire massive amounts of nylon, fabric, and propane in a heavily surveilled, rationing communist state like East Germany without the secret police just kicking your door down?
That is exactly what makes these escapes so extraordinary. You couldn't just walk into a hardware store and buy materials for an aircraft, obviously.
Right.
These families had to buy small amounts of fabric from dozens of different stores over months or even years so they wouldn't raise suspicion.
Oh.
They had to construct the burner in a basement, testing it in total secrecy, knowing that a single loud noise or a nosy neighbor could mean life in a political prison. The psychological toll of that kind of sustained covert operation is just immense.
I can't even imagine. And the tunnel diggers faced the exact same terrifying logistics, right? There were groups of recklessly brave students who actually dug tunnels under the wall. But again, how do you do that? You are digging under a heavily fortified military border. How do you quietly dispose of tons of wet earth without anyone noticing?
Yeah, it's not like you can just leave it out on the street.
Exactly. And how do you keep the tunnel from just collapsing on you?
Well, they had to hide the dirt in abandoned basement rooms, basically carrying it bucket by bucket.
Bucket by bucket. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And they were dealing with groundwater, lack of oxygen, and the constant paralyzing fear of informants. When you look at the mechanics of these escapes, it strips away the politics and really just leaves you with raw human drive.
Exactly. When you look at this level of extreme risk-taking where failure meant imprisonment or death, it tells us something really profound about the human necessity for freedom.
It really does.
It wasn't a political preference for these 5,000 people. It was a biological imperative, like oxygen. You can pour millions of tons of concrete, but you cannot permanently suppress the human spirit.
No, you can't. It proves that freedom isn't just a luxury. When it is denied, people will risk their lives, their families, everything they have, to reclaim it. The wall was incredibly effective at blocking physical movement, but it couldn't alter basic human nature.
Now, while individual citizens were literally digging through dirt to bypass the wall, the only way to permanently remove it required digging through decades of geopolitical paranoia.
Good transition.
Thanks. To understand how that happened, we have to look at the macro-level standoff. So this brings us right into the heart of the Cold War. For you listening, just to set the global stage a bit, the Cold War was this massive, decades-long period of intense tension between the Western world and the communist countries of Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union.
It was an era defined by the looming constant threat of global nuclear annihilation.
Right.
Two opposing worldviews locked in a standoff where literally one wrong move could trigger the end of civilization.
And right in the middle of this boiling tension, in 1982, U.S. President Ronald Reagan visits Berlin. He looks at this concrete monument to failure, and he poses a direct, pointed question to Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev. Reagan asks, and I'm quoting here, "Do Soviet leaders want to be remembered for a prison wall ringed with barbed wire and with armed guards whose weapons are aimed at their own civilians?"
It is a brilliant diplomatic maneuver, honestly. Well, he is bypassing traditional statecraft and framing the wall as a permanent moral stain on the personal legacy of the Soviet leadership. He's essentially forcing Gorbachev to look in the mirror.
But what happens next is what truly changed the world. President Reagan and Soviet General Secretary Gorbachev actually started writing letters to each other.
Yeah.
They became pen pals. Reagan later noted that he realized those first letters marked the cautious beginning of a foundation for both a better relationship between their countries and a genuine friendship between the two men.
Which is pretty incredible given the stakes.
Oh, absolutely. And this friendship eventually thawed the tensions of the Cold War, leading to the 1987 Intermediate Nuclear Forces Reduction Treaty, which banned an entire class of intermediate-range nuclear missiles. But, okay, wait. I have to push back here.
Sure.
I have a really hard time believing a couple of friendly letters dismantled a nuclear standoff. I mean, wasn't the Soviet Union's economy completely collapsing at this point? How much of this peace process was actually genuine friendship and how much was just Gorbachev being out of money and out of options?
That's a fair question. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is absolutely a synthesis of both.
Okay.
You are right. The Soviet economy was crumbling under the weight of its military spending and its inherently flawed system. Gorbachev knew the current path was totally unsustainable. He was seeking peace, prosperity, and liberalization out of sheer necessity.
Right, because he had to.
Exactly. However, a collapsing superpower is incredibly dangerous. It's like a wounded animal. If Reagan had taken a purely hostile, hardline approach, Gorbachev's hardliners would never have allowed him to negotiate.
Oh, I see. So the personal trust created the runway for the economic reality to land safely.
Precisely. We often think of global politics as this big, impersonal machine, but nations are led by human beings. Reagan was fiercely anti-communist, but he was willing to engage Gorbachev the person.
Yeah.
By establishing human connection, they created a space of trust where monumental agreements could actually be signed.
And that 1987 treaty was truly monumental. Banning intermediate-range nuclear missiles wasn't just bureaucratic paperwork. Intermediate missiles were terrifying because their short flight times meant leaders had only minutes to decide whether to launch a counterstrike.
Right. Hardly any time at all.
It maximized the chance of an accidental apocalypse. It was like standing in a room soaked in gasoline while both guys are holding lit matches. So banning them was really stepping back from the cliff edge.
It changed the temperature of the entire world. And that top-level diplomatic groundwork, combined with the relentless pressure of everyday citizens demanding freedom, leads us directly to the ultimate climax at the Brandenburg Gate.
June 12, 1987. President Reagan delivers a speech in West Berlin that practically altered the Earth's rotation.
It's iconic.
At the time, saying the wall would fall was basically political heresy. Everyone, including his own advisors, thought the wall was a permanent fixture of reality. But he stands before the Brandenburg Gate and says, "This wall will fall, for it cannot withstand faith, it cannot withstand truth. The wall cannot withstand freedom." And then he issues that famous direct challenge. "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall."
Reagan was really poking at a fundamental flaw in the communist system there. He was asserting that physical barriers built on falsehoods and oppression are inherently unstable.
Right.
Truth, in his view, isn't just an abstract concept. It is an active corrosive force against tyranny.
So what does this all mean? It means Reagan's hypothesis was tested and he was proven entirely correct.
Yeah, it was.
Just over 2 years later, in November 1989, the unthinkable happens. The citizens of East Germany, realizing the regime has lost its backing and its will to violently suppress them, literally walk up to the wall.
Just walk right up to it.
They begin using everyday tools, picks and hammers from their own garages to break away chunks of the concrete. Cranes and bulldozers pull down whole sections. And for the first time since 1945, Berlin is united.
The poetic justice of that image is just staggering.
It really is.
Think about it. A 104-mile military fortification designed by a superpower being chipped away by everyday people with hand tools. It was dismantled by the very citizens it was built to imprison.
And the celebration, it is described as the greatest street party in the history of the world. Over 2 million East Berliners poured into West Berlin.
Wow.
Strangers were hugging, crying, celebrating a freedom that many of them hadn't tasted in almost 3 decades. By October 3, 1990, the reunification of East and West Germany was made official. And just to wrap up the historical timeline for you listening, Gorbachev stepped down as Soviet leader in 1991. Reagan, having served 2 terms through the 80s, passed away in 2004 at the age of 93. Today, a piece of that very same Berlin Wall stands on the west side of the Reagan Library in California.
A profound resting place, really. A piece of a prison wall now serving as a historical artifact in a free society, just baking in the California sun.
It's easy to look at the Berlin Wall as a relic of 20th century history, just a closed chapter. But the fundamental question of what a wall is actually designed to do, to lock things out or to lock things in, is incredibly relevant to the spaces we inhabit today.
Absolutely.
We've spent this entire conversation looking at a wall as a weapon, but that isn't the only way a wall functions.
This raises an important question about the duality of walls. Walls inherently have meaning, but that meaning is assigned by the architect.
Right.
They're built to keep people and things in a place, but they're also built to keep elements out. A wall can be a tool of captivity, but it can also be a shield.
And this brings us to a really thought-provoking concept from Elder M. Russell Ballard from the April 2019 General Conference. He took this architectural concept and applied it to our personal lives, specifically the walls within our homes. He taught, and I'll quote him here, "Church-supported gospel learning and studying are an opportunity to renew our spirit and our devotion to God within the walls of our homes."
The contrast there is beautiful.
Isn't it?
The East German government built a wall to block light, to block truth, and to block freedom from reaching its people. But the walls of our homes are entirely within our own control. We can intentionally transform them into sanctuaries.
Think about what the outside world is like today. It is noisy, it is cynical, it is exhausting. We are constantly bombarded by distractions and anxieties on our phones and, well, everywhere.
Oh, for sure. Constant noise.
If we are not careful, our homes just become another place where we consume that chaos. But Elder Ballard is suggesting a radical alternative. A wall isn't inherently evil or inherently good. It is all about the intention behind it. Are you using your walls to isolate yourself, or are you using them to protect something sacred?
Exactly. It is a question of active curation. Just as the citizens of Berlin had to actively take hammers to the physical wall that oppressed them, we have to actively build up the spiritual environment within our own walls.
Yeah.
We have to be the architects of our own sanctuaries. The Berlin Wall fell because it was fundamentally incompatible with truth.
Right.
If we fill the walls of our homes with truth, with gospel learning and devotion, they become incredibly strong. They act as a filter. They become barriers against the falsehoods of the outside world, preserving a space where the spirit can actually thrive.
I want to ask this directly to you listening because it is the core challenge of our deep dive today. How do you use the walls of your home as a place to study and learn while inviting the spirit?
It's a great question.
Are your walls keeping the noise out, or are they just trapping the stress in? It is such an empowering thought to realize that the same architectural concept that once held 2.5 million people hostage can be the very thing that gives you a space to renew your own spirit.
It reminds us that our environment is largely shaped by our choices. History is made by human decisions, whether that is a president demanding a wall be torn down, a desperate student digging a tunnel through the mud, or just an individual choosing to intentionally make their living room a sanctuary of learning.
What an epic journey we've been on today. We started in a violently divided Berlin in 1961, looking at an entire city waking up to a concrete prison.
Yeah.
We explored the mechanics of the unstoppable human spirit, the logistical miracles of hot air balloons and secret tunnels defying armed guards. We saw how the terrifying geopolitical standoff of the Cold War was thawed by the unlikely letters and trust built between two rival world leaders.
It's really amazing to look back on.
It is. We witnessed the greatest street party in history as citizens took their own hammers to 104 miles of oppression. And finally, we brought it all the way home to the sacred walls of your own living space and the immense power you have in choosing how to use them.
The connective tissue through all of this is the undeniable power of truth. Whether it's tearing down a communist regime or building a family's faith, truth is the active ingredient that changes reality.
I couldn't agree more. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We've seen that if a 104-mile concrete wall, guarded by attack dogs, armed soldiers, and backed by the threat of a global superpower, couldn't withstand the simple, unyielding forces of truth and human connection. Wait, let me rephrase. That without pausing couldn't withstand the simple forces of truth and human connection, what invisible walls in our own lives or in our communities are we treating as permanent? What personal barriers or societal divisions are we just accepting as the way things are that could actually be dismantled with a single courageous hammer stroke of truth or friendship today? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep seeking out the truth, and keep challenging the walls around you. Catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.